Eastend Arts Council presents Jack Walton and Friends. Bill Bourne, Sandra Butala, Joelle Fafard, Louise Halfe, Joseph Naytowhow, Bruce Rice, all in support of the Wallace Stegner House. You can donate at geographyofhope.ca. The house needs a new roof and the programming needs sustainability. Here's a little tour around the house.
Banse, Tatamskat now and Wakomaganak. Greetings, my relatives, my friends, and all the people that will be involved tonight. I'm going to sing just a couple songs just to kind of mix it up, as a way of honoring this beautiful event, to dedicate it to the fundraisers and also the ones that will be giving what we call Papi we win, the offerings from Mother Earth. So this is one ska, sunrise song. And this is also an honor song. It could be sung in the morning or in an evening. So this is the song for tonight. This is for Stegner House fundraising event, and all the artists, all the organizers for the Stegner House, keepers. I've been there, so I'm really grateful to be asked to keep the energy of that place, clean and within the arts and within the writing spirit. So prayer for all of you, for all of us, because the old people say, "Mamo kamatotan." Let's do it together. Mamo ta magsimanto haksiwatsin. Kananas kompnan. Samina peagautum kauiette ispaigomota. Ainto tamatsikon papiwewin. Niwaiko tapig. Kikawi noaski. Uitsi higuge. Stegner House Committee. Egomina Eastend. Ygdio ei sinog. Kanoita gomo skeikan jego kai siika sutta Wallace Stegner. Kem kahkeu kami upain. Eikö sun tipää keisen tuttu magista magian? Keisa suima kaako muutti. Me äkässä kannu muuta kaap chihtään. Aga uitsi ehutsik, smehutsi, ego chapas. Eikö sun tipää keitu aina muuta nus. Kaatte maatsen tuttu magista muatse kohoi. Tähtö, kun tapas nehi unio, kun tapas nehi unio. Kauitta kuhtiitsi kaapa chihtää tseko mua skeikan. Euttikaa me asiko muuti Eastend, Saskatchewan. Yksi tipää keittoon, hai teittoon.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bruce Rice, Saskatchewan Poet Laureate, and I'm really happy to be supporting Stegner House because actually a lot of my last few books were written in and around there and meeting the writers at Stegner House, and it's a very important part of our literary culture in this province, and it's something that takes us beyond the borders. I was asked to do something about landscape, but the fact is that I come from 3 landscapes, only one of which is prairie. I was born up in Prince Albert, well, not born there, but grew up there, and hardly even ever made it to Saskatoon, let alone the quote-unquote prairie, and moved from there to the Maritimes after a bit of other moving around. And then finally, I was about 30 when I came to Regina and started. It took me a long time to see the prairie, so I actually come from 3 different landscapes. And so I'd like to read something about that. This is called Self-Portrait as Landscape. I thought it was out there, a dialect, the indelible story, a child's memory of snow, and later being out on Black's Harbor in a one-lunger 24 hours before the storm. I thought I had a handle on the persistence of things, our human gravity, that I belonged to the music, the gentle rocking accents of St. John, New Brunswick, being so different from St. John's, Newfoundland, centuries locked in islands of language, where every song lost is a home left behind. Here in the West, I hear the difference between the Queen's English and the studied drawl farmers' sons, weekend cowboys, and mechanics who work for the mine have picked up from TV. I thought there was a difference between an elegy for beauty and what beauty is. Today in the studio, I studied a painting, the elongated, gestured toward a horizon with the minimal means at my disposal, and recalled Tuknaski's Wood Mountain. And he's a traveler, says in these hills, walking's a lament for how things disappear. Each passing year, he becomes more like the mountain, his ear for the way people speak, making way for sage-grouse drumming. I have moved too much, not sure which landscape is mine. The north's uneasy shifting, a darkness explained by the pull of distant objects on the far side of the earth, until night makes a harmony of not seeing, and the rising tide comes all the way in. I am an immigrant from another latitude, one my grandfather fled to, escaping the Dust Bowl. After that, dust in the house was a weakness. The word dirt always attended by something else, lower than dirt, out of the dirt, dirt poor, dirt farmer tilling the last thing the earth will yield up. I have been in weather and deprived of weather. These meditations feel like signs in a language not fully mine. Whatever success is, it's minuscule. A raised beach on an island moving upward at a speed that can only be measured in ages. It has taken me 30 years to learn to see the prairie, and still I toil over my own strangeness. Walking like this, worn by erosions and failures, things I was sure of split by the heat, then freezing. Winter, my passionate season. So, Saskatchewan, what if God had no plan? If while he was walking one day, the prairie unrolled before him, and he came to a 3-stranded barbed wire fence, the number of strands meaning the fence belongs to some farmer, not the government. And the wires creaked as he pushed them together so he could get over. The first time anyone had done that, getting the knack, the beginning of something one does, that everyone does. And he found himself standing in front of a field of flax. Stems and leaves smudged into each other as a blue mist of flowers appeared, rolling up a long rise in the land to where the horizon begins, the wall of sky scalded. A small hawk with a flecked white belly, wheeling slowly across it in loops, the intervention of writing. And he fumbled for words because there hadn't been words. Then, between this blue and this, the world went on, creating itself over and over. A rasping sound, then nothing. A vast silence rising for hours, each of us alone, the first in a place that is always beginning. So thanks everybody, and please support Stegner House, and I'm looking forward to all the other artists tonight, the other writers, and to hear a little bit of music too. So over and out.
First of all, kinanaskump na ogak yo pentoto yanats kagi saka kumsta hinimiwe teno tanista hepe pixquan. Ewaminaya. Yeah. I give you thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today and to share my poetry. And I also give you thanks, all of you, for listening and supporting this great cause. So I'm going to read from my new manuscript, Oasis, Kinky and Disheveled. And it'll be released by Brick Books this April. And I'm looking forward to it. It's really different from my previous works of poetry. It's lighter, and it's poetics and stories that I've collected from the community, from Native and non-Native community, and I asked them to share with me their funniest stories that ever happened to them that now they can laugh at themselves. Oasis means in Cree, little child, commonly known as little child. It actually means much more than that. It means a spirit which we have been loaned to us. And this Oasis child in this particular book is the adult child within. And she's mischievous, I guess is the word. She's fun, she laughs at herself, she shares the story through the narrator, and And in my language, we don't have he and she pronouns. We use them interchangeably. So Oasis is also a shapeshifter. You never know what form she's going to come as. And she's a lot of fun. And here are some of her stories. Let's go. I hope we raise a lot of money for the Wallace Stegner house. Here's the first one. It's called Translation. Oasis sat in a sweat lodge listening to little white man chant and pray. His nahio was, we guess, for the yearning heart. Oasis was proud. She taught little white man to loosen his stiff mouth and say, Gakyo niwagamaganak, all my relations at the end of a ceremony. At the last splash, when the lodge mouth was flung open, a rush of wind tore into the steaming lodge, circled the womb. Little white man shouted, Gakyo niwigmaganak, all my wives. Oasis guessed her woman relations had gone too far and the spoon hunter needed a talking to. Gakyo niwagamaganak actually means all my relations. Gakyo niwigamaganak means all my wives. So that's what the little white man shouted, all my wives. To this day, he's known in the Cree community to have many, many wives. Comeuppance. One day, Oasis was asked to lift up his pipe in a gymnasium full of people. Belly was rolling, grumbling about the turnips and the cabbage that were burping in his cave. Oasis shifted and rubbed Big Belly in an attempt to silence him. When he was done praying, giving the Creator a difficult time, he stood up to pontificate, but Big Belly was having none of it. In an explosive thrust, farting spirit escaped the tight squeeze of the back door. Oasis acted embarrassed, covered his horse laugh behind his fingers, well and truly deflated. Peculiarities. Oasis slept over at Bitternose's house. She woke up and found Bitternose staring into the darkness. Oasis waved her hands in front of her face, thinking that she was looking at the fireflies outside the window. But it was just the way Bitternose slept, eyes keeping watch. She was a peculiar creature. Besides having large headlights, she had extra nipples in her armpits. They spilled juice whenever she fed her baby. Her fourth toe was webbed. Oasis was filled with wonder. She ran her fingers down her mustache, scratched her hairy chest, and shifted her tail. Vigilance. Oasis came out of the bathroom freshly shaved. His face next over the jawbone, but was as smooth as his bare bum. He looked just out of his diapers. No longer the washboard old man with his face down, studiously inspecting his fingers. He was an owl that could swivel his head and another face would reveal itself. He once told an audience of Naytowhow that his wife was a very jealous Isquale. And when another Isquale came to talk to him, his wife would cover her nose and pretend to sneeze and to ask discreetly, who's she? Okay. I'm going to read the last one. Okay, this one's called Always Falling In. Oasis carried 100 pounds across mud, marsh, hills to the other side of the portage. After unloading, sweating and panting, she bent to splash water on her face. She fell in head first. She stood up laughing, looked around to see if her companions were watching. Later, squatting on a wet slanted rock, washing dishes, she slowly slid into the lake. On the final portage, when she and Little White Man set the canoe down, grunting, she toppled in. In a flat voice, Little White Man told her, "Those stunts are hard on the canoe." From then on, at all the lakes and rivers, her other companions hung onto her pant loops. Ay, kinaskum din.
Just thinking about the Cypress Hills and all that Wallace got up to and everything, and writing all those books and all that, and I can relate. I grew up on a farm in Alberta, you know, and beautiful. My parents even played for dances in those days in the country halls all around, and so they would take us inevitably, and we had such a blast. Just like growing up with that kind of environment going on. I mean, it was great. And there's our parents up there playing away, and everybody's just having a blast. You know, weddings, parties, everything. It was fun. But, you know, and then in the mornings on the farm, I mean, I grew up on the farm. And well, it's just beautiful stuff. So here's a song about that. Wallace, friends of Wallace, called the Old Buffalo. Oh, yellow flowers in the sun they bloom. The meadow lark, he sing a song. Peace in the air, love everywhere. To us such a place belongs. Look all around the world, easy go the days. Talking about an age of happiness, where man and animals play. There is a lonesome old buffalo roaming on the plains all alone. He doesn't have anybody, he doesn't even have a home. He's standing quiet in the morning sun, his shaggy head is hanging low. Oh, but his dreams fly high as the sky, and he'll join them by and by, he knows. Where do you think we are going? Where do you feel this will lead? What are the things worth knowing to satisfy our every need? I stood on the mountaintop and saw the river run into the sea. A long line of humanity was trying to get a boat to set them free. I saw a man with his family. His love for them was clean and true. He was searching in the trees for the river to take him to the home he knew. And I read a book that told me things that seemed to touch my soul. How old Abraham was a humble man, living in the days of old. He just pulled up stakes one day, and he left this old world behind. Oh, he didn't know what he was going to. He didn't know what he would find. Where do you think we are going? Yeah, what do you feel this will lead? What are the things worth knowing to satisfy our every need? Yeah, there's a lonesome old buffalo roaming on the plains all alone. He doesn't have anybody, he doesn't even have a home. The yellow flower in the sun they bloom, and the meadowlark you sing a song. Peace in the air, love everywhere, oh, to us such a place belongs. Where do you think we are going? Where do you feel this will lead? What are the things worth knowing to satisfy our every need? Where do you think we are going to? Where do you feel this will lead? What are the things worth knowing to satisfy our every need? All the best.
I married Peter Butala in 1976 and came to the hay farm and ranch in the Eastend area to live. And Peter's mother, Alice Butala, lived in Eastend, and she told me almost immediately about Wallace Stegner and the house that his family had built back in, it was actually in 1916, I believe. And I went over to have a look at it, and I could see that it was not in the best of shape. belonged to one of the Svenis families at that time. And I thought it would be the best thing we could do would be to see if we could maybe save it. And I knew what I was getting into because I'd been involved in lots of volunteer activities, but I was younger then and full of ambition. And I had the impression that everybody in town knew all about the Stegner connection to Eastend and who had built that house. So then I went home and talked to my husband, who was extremely supportive. The Arts Council made him a lifetime member for all the work he did. We decided, myself and a few other people, I remember the LeBastard family, Janine was alive then, and Carol and Henry, Elsie Bedo. I'm sorry, I shouldn't get going on names because I know I can't remember everyone, but they were just wonderful. They thought it was a great idea. So the next thing was to buy the house, and the Svenises were extremely accommodating. The asking price was $10,000, and we had not even a penny. So we had to figure out how we were going to raise that money, which we succeeded in doing with Orland Svenis's huge help. And then we now owned the house, and it seemed like if we wanted to apply for grants to bring it back up to date again, restore it, and make whatever changes would be necessary within the Heritage Act, we needed to belong to an agency that could apply for grants. And so we decided we would ask to become a committee of the Eastend Arts Council, and that's what happened. And then we began to make our decisions about how we would support the house. And at first we thought that we just wanted to make it a museum, you know, full of pioneer stuff, but there already is one in town. And we soon found out we wouldn't get any grants if we tried to do that. So then we said, well, we'll make it a writer's retreat. And then we realized, because when you start and you're completely unknown and you're in this remote region, you have to cast your net wider. So it became an artist's retreat, and people from any country could apply. And we restored the house with Larry Pierce did all the work with his crew, and they did a wonderful job, and they made the house beautiful. And we got in touch with Wallace Stegner in California, and he helped us make decisions. Okay, I'm reading from Wolf Willow, A History, a Story, and a Memory of the Last Plains Frontier by Wallace Stegner. And this will be the reading that everybody in the community can practically recite by heart nowadays, but anyone who's not familiar will understand, as I have come to more and more over the years, what a wonderful writer Wallace Stegner was, how very gifted. So, sitting in the sticky smelling, nostalgic air of the Greek's confectionery store, I am afflicted with the sense of how many whom I have known are dead, and how little evidence I have that I myself have lived what I remember. It is not quite the same feeling I imagined when I contemplated driving out to the homestead. That would have been absolute denial. This, with its tantalizing glimpses, its hints and survivals, is not denial, but only doubt. There is enough left to disturb me, but not to satisfy me. So I will go closer. I will walk on down into the West Bend and take a look at our house. By now, circling and more than half unwillingly, I have come into the west end of town, have passed Corky Jones's house, put off till later that meeting, and the open field beside Downs where we used to play Run Sheep Run in the evenings, and I stand facing the four-gabled white frame house that my father built. It ought to be explosive with nostalgia and bright with recollections, for this is where we lived for 5 or 6 of my most impressionable years, where we all nearly died with the flu in 1918, where my grandmother went crazy and had to be taken away by a Mountie to the provincial asylum. Whoever lives in the house now is a tidy housekeeper. The yard is neat, the porch swept, The corner where I used to pasture my broken-legged colt is a bed of flowers. The yard where we hopefully watered our baby spruces is a lawn enclosed by a green hedge. The old well with the hand pump is still in the side yard. For an instant, my teeth are on edge with the memory of the dry screech of that pump before a dipperful of priming water took hold, and an instant later I feel the old stitch in my side from an even earlier time, the time when we still carried water from the river, and I dipped a bucket down into the hole in the ice and toted it, staggering, and with the other arm stuck stiffly out, up the dugway to the kitchen door. Those instants of memory are persuasive. I wonder if I should knock on the door and ask the housewife to let me look around, go upstairs to our old bedroom in the west gable, examine the ceiling to see if the stains from the fire department's chemicals are still there. My brother and I used to lie in bed and imagine scenes and faces among the blotches, giving ourselves inadvertent Rorschach tests. I have a vivid memory, too, of the night the stains were made, when we came out into the hard cold from the pastime theater and heard the firehouse bell going and saw the volunteer fire department already on the run, and followed them up the ditch toward the glow of the fire, wondering whose house, until we got close, and it was ours. This is from The Perfection of the Morning, An Apprenticeship in Nature. It's my 94 book about my arrival in that rural agricultural community and trying to establish myself. And here is the part of the book which most people have commented to me about. On a hot summer afternoon, having been alone since dawn and bored with the pursuits I'd been toying with for the last few hours, I wandered out to that hilltop, my head down, thinking. In those early days, as my old life began to waver and dissolve, and the new one still had no firm shape, I was always deep in thought. The side I was approaching the hill from slopes gradually up to the crest. On the other side, it drops off abruptly, 100 or so feet to the prairie below, where the spring runoff sometimes pools to form a shallow slough. By this time of year, July, the water had long since evaporated, but it had left behind a stand of grass richer than the surrounding prairie, where there were always a few animals to be found. On that day, on the far side of the hill, in that slough bottom, 20 or so cows stood grazing, or lay with their calves beside them, peacefully chewing their cuds. In their midst, Peter's saddle horse, reins dragging, browsed lazily too, and far off at the edge of the cluster of cattle, a couple of antelopes stood, noses down in the grass. All of them were oblivious to my presence and paying no attention to each other, as if they were all members of the same contented tribe on that still hot afternoon under that magnificent dome of sky and in the midst of those thousands of acres of short, pale grass. About 100 feet out from the foot of the hill, in the midst of his animals, lying face down in the grass, head on one bent arm, his hat shielding his eyes, Peter lay, sound asleep. I stopped dead in my tracks, overcome with an emotion I couldn't identify, that I had caught him in a moment so private I felt I had no right to be there, that something was happening here that was beyond my experience and my understanding, that meant something significant. I could feel it in my heart and in my gut, which my brain couldn't grasp, couldn't name or classify. I backed away quickly before I was seen. I hurried down the long slope of the hill and, full of silent wonder, walked back across the fields to the house. I never breathed a word of what I had seen to anyone.
And now to play us out, Joel Fafard, and the song you've been listening to, one of his creations, Clickety Clack. So once again, please donate to the Wallace Stegner House. The house needs a new roof, and the programming is in need of sustainability. Let's keep this campaign going, and let's keep one of Saskatchewan and Canada and North America's little cultural gems alive and well. Thank you for the evening. My name is Jack Walton, and here's a little tune from my trio, and also a passing recognition to my buddy Freewheeling Frank Kelly on stand-up bass, who passed away this year.
It's mine, oh, what matter? Holding your head over here. Take us for a walk there, Frank. Chasing butterflies, jump real high, look him in the eye, oh, be on mine, over matter. Oh, when your head over matter. Thank you.